righty, gang. Welcome to the podcast. Today, I think we have a really fun one for our listeners who really like to hear the how and the why behind programming. So today, we're going to kind of nerd out on, it's really an updated version. I've done some videos in the past and even some podcasts in the past about how we program, and it's in constant evolution. And I brought our coach, Jack Howard, who is in charge of Power Hour. And then he's also part of our overall programming team. And he helps me layer in the strength that we do currently in our all levels class as well. And what he's really brought to it is a real conjugate kind of feel. So he came from CrossFit Conjugate and is also on staff in the, I've seen it written a few different ways. What do you guys call the seminar?
Conjugate Powerlifting Seminar.
Okay. Conjugate Powerlifting. And then it is, the cert itself is called
Conjugate Powerlifting Methods Seminar.
Gotcha. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not butchering it.
No, you're good.
I've said it a few different ways before. Yeah. So we're going to just dive into how I program all levels, how he programs Power Hour, and then how we kind of mesh the two. And we're going to talk about our current strength cycle. Again, we're not going to dive into all the real nuanced stuff. We're going to give you a nice basic overview. And then most of our members here, you guys all have our year-long outlook, which really, it kind of dives into some more detail. So after you listen to this, you can dive into that. And then you can see like month by month, week by week, including even like down to benchmark workouts, what dates they're going to be on. So you can kind of look at that after it, and it's going to kind of put some of that together. So I'll get it kind of started here with, if you're watching this, I'm not going to be looking at you the whole time. I'm going to kind of turn back and forth. But if we look at the board here, all levels. So all levels CrossFit is our big CrossFit training program. It's not our competition program. This is our program for our everyday athletes, right up until like competing in the open and even like, quarterfinal athletes. So constant variance, functional movement, high intensity. Again, so the constant variance, it's constant variance with a plan. So we actually will see repeated strength, repeated workouts, and we'll even see it, in a way that it is, especially with the strength stuff, done a couple of times or sometimes even, in a wave to create some capacity in that specific area. Functional movements, of course, in CrossFit, we're trying to move large loads over long distances quickly. That's how we define a functional movement in CrossFit. And then high intensity, that's relative to the athlete. So if you're bogged down with kids, work, not getting a ton of sleep, ratcheting down that intensity, something that's challenging for you, but that's not going to get you hurt. There's a lot of variability in the high intensity. In our all levels class, we have an emphasis on GPP all year round. And then we have that with 12-week macro cycles that are going to focus on some SPP in each cycle. So GPP is general physical preparedness. So that's just generally getting fit and in shape. So without a real focus on like a sport specific skill. Specific physical preparedness is going to be dialing in a specific skill. And in CrossFit and in strength sports, that can be a specific lift, like a snatch, a clean and jerk, getting, your triceps stronger for handstand push-ups. So we do work some specific physical preparedness specifically before the open. So that's in the all levels class. In that winter training cycle, we're going to see a lot of skill work to kind of prep us for that CrossFit Open. So when we get hit with those skills, we're not caught off guard. The macro cycle. So again, GPP is our focus all year round. So if you're not a competitor, you don't do the Open, oftentimes you're just going to notice, oh, it seems like we've been squatting a little more often. But generally we're not going to see just like a complete departure from what we're typically doing in class. But these macro cycles, we are going to have a focus every 12 weeks. So I'm just starting this off in January in the winter. Our focus, we have open prep skills. We transition from slower strength, so power lifts, bench press, overhead strict press, deadlifts, and squats to Olympic lifts. So we're going to focus more on applying that strength to Olympic lifts in the wintertime. We are going to infuse dynamic effort, conjugate style training waves. So continuing to kind of stoke up those power lifts and keep them maintained while we're working on those Olympic lifts. And then we have quite a few like fun special benchmarks that we just do at CrossFit Grandview. So we have Hot for the Holidays going on in the winter. So every Friday we're doing like a contest workout. And then we have a Thanksgiving workout that we do every year and a pretty cool CrossFit Grandview version of the 12 Days of Christmas that we've locked in the past, I don't know, I think we've done it for a decade now. And it's one that like we've even had old members who aren't members come back for because they want to keep testing themselves against that. In the spring, after the open, so the open, it's kind of like we're just maintaining. So the open, we are out of the winter cycle. Out of the spring, we're in what would be like a competition in season sort of mini cycle. It's only 3 weeks. Coming out of that, we do a 6-week conjugate reload, which is very similar to our fall strength focused one. It's a short little training cycle to bring back some of that powerlifting strength and the slow lifts. We're going to start to reintroduce running and sleds. And then the next 6 weeks, which we're just starting now, we've got Murph prep where we're going to focus on higher volume of pull-ups, push-ups, and air squats. Summer, we're going to then express our fitness without bias. So really that's a training cycle where we're not like focusing in on one aspect of fitness. We're going to be outside a lot. We are going to be applying strength, biased workouts into the classes about 3 days a week. But we're going to also introduce the higher end gymnastic work back in that we did in the winter. And this is the time we do our L2 testing. So we'll have L2 testing baked into the classes. So if you're interested in doing our competition class in the summer, we're going to have opportunities to test all the level 2 stuff. And then in the fall, we do our strength focused cycle. So we're going to do a structured conjugate weekly plan where we have 3 conjugate weightlifting days. And then we finish with a rogue total, which is a little different than a powerlifting total. It's a little more applicable to CrossFit. It's a 1 RM front squat, overhead strict press, and then a conventional deadlift. That's just kind of an overview on what the all levels programming looks like and how it's kind of just like planned over a year. We're going to go to the back, and on the back side, Jack's going to explain how he plans Power Hour, and then we're going to come together at the end and how we're infusing that conjugate strength into our CrossFit classes. There we go. Got it. Perfect. This is a good one to watch on YouTube, or we also have it on Facebook if you're listening, because we do have some visuals that we're showing. I'm trying not to just like assume you're watching, but this is a good one. If you're listening to this, maybe switch to like a phone and watch on YouTube. You can of course listen to it, but it's a great one to watch.
Perfect. So as far as our current setup for Power Hour goes, we have Monday as max effort lower. We have Tuesday. We don't have any work on that day, so that's typically seen as a rest day. I still program specific things on those days, so sometimes Olympic lifting or conditioning as well. But typically, it's going to go max effort lower on Monday, max effort upper on Wednesday. Then we're looking at dynamic lower on Friday, and then dynamic upper on Saturday. So specifically, we follow these principles of 3-week waves. I still do it for, it says specifically for CrossFit on there, but I also do it for Power Hour as well, because most of our members are going to be doing CrossFit anyway, or some kind of high intensity like Rev and the other programs that we have. So I keep it at that 3 week waves with a 4th deload week where we change our volume and maybe add a little bit more or take some away, maybe a little bit more GPP muscle work, stuff like that, where we just work on bodybuilding. Then we go with that 80-20 rule. So these are just the principles of Conjugate anyway. So 20% on your main lift, then 80% for your accessory work. So that also includes CrossFit. Those all fall into that accessory work.
So that's from a volume standpoint.
Yes,
correct?
a volume standpoint. Yep. So that's where you're going to get most of your strength is by doing your accessory work. So if someone comes to me and asks me, hey, should I do my main lift or should I do my accessory work? I'm always going to go with the accessory work because you can get more in and you can take on more stress. You've already had stress outside in like your daily life, work, kids, whatever you got going on. You don't need to be taking a main lift like a max or maybe a dynamic work and then putting yourself into a hole.
I saw a podcast recently or with Laura Phelps on it where she talked about that's a big thing that a lot of people err and they'll get jacked up like they're doing a competition max, and they'll spend a couple of hours just like, or not a couple hours. Yep. They'll spend the majority of their training session building to like this insane max, and then they have nothing left for the accessory work. And she's like, you need to flip flop that.
Yeah, we take about 14 minutes. Okay. 14 minutes. That's always the typical way that we go. You have 7 sets. You have 2 sets to get up to about 80 to 85%, and then you have five singles to hit that 90% or above. Gotcha. So if you hit 90% or above for 3 weeks, that 4th week you're going to PR.
Yep.
It's just the science of it.
Yep.
But then for our general purpose of why we do this, and for Conjugate, it's to decrease general physical weakness with developing absolute strength, speed, and muscle mass. So it is good for athletics of any type, does not matter. We can also change the variations. So if we have, say, a weight-based athlete like a wrestler or, say, a weightlifter, we can change the volume so that they don't gain weight or they don't gain any kind of unnecessary muscle mass or body tissue. So those are all ideal for our specific Power Hour people and then any other athletes that we work with. And then ideally, if we're going into, say, like our specifics for like CrossFit for Power Hour, we're going to have at least about 3 or 4 accessories. Typically in a regular Conjugate style, we would have, say, 7 to 8, and most of those would be repeated muscle or repeated effort. So different kinds of stimulus that are hitting the exact same muscle, so we can hit it differently. And then for the next 3 weeks, we would either change the variation, but we're still hitting the same muscle groups, or we're going to change the piece entirely.
Gotcha.
Yep.
And then, so just a question, just to kind of nerd out on. So if you wanted someone, so say like they were in a sport like running or a weight controlled sport like a boxing or wrestling,
yeah,
and they did not want to gain more muscle mass, what would be the prescription difference? Yeah. Like if you were doing something like that.
So if we were to do that and we were working with an athlete like that, especially for running, runners need strength.
Yep.
They need strength to hold position, especially for ultra marathons and other such triathlons and sports like that. Same thing for boxing.
Yep.
So all of these are endurance sports. Granted, boxing, you're going to need power, so you're going to have to do dynamic effort. So you might bring those dynamic efforts down and try to be more explosive, but the percentages and such will stay the same.
Just bring the reps down a bit.
Yep, bring the reps down, probably more like a 7x3 or maybe more like a 12x2.
Gotcha.
12x2 would keep them firing. It's that 1-2 punch that they're trying to knock somebody out with. Yep. We're trying to make sure that their combinations stay fast without losing speed and power. So trying to generate speed and power, because if you ever see like George St. Pierre, he got real fast with his punches, but he lost that knockout power. Early on, he was good at knocking people out.
Yep.
But as he got later and later into his career, he couldn't knock him out. He just hit him with a barrage of punches. He moves fast, moves well.
A lot of decisions. Yeah. So that's a lot of like gymnastics and Olympic weightlifting.
Yes, he
so
did a lot of gymnastics.
Pop and lost a little bit of that, like just raw, like power.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yeah. When you become accustomed to a speed, especially say like a thrower or a like discus, shot put, stuff like that, they can get stronger and stronger, but they still have to throw that ball. It has a certain amount of weight. And once they become accustomed to that weight, they won't be able to throw it any further.
Gotcha.
Yep. So we got to keep changing the stimulus, keep trying to increase the speed, increase the power, and then increase the implement.
Gotcha. So we have this CrossFit setup, and this is what we learned when I took the Conjugate course with you. And we do it a little different in all levels. So I would say this setup is I think it's great.
It's definitely geared more towards athletes.
More towards like a competitive,
yes.
Games athlete.
Exactly.
With the amount of volume that you're going to get in there.
Yeah.
Lifting weights heavy 5 days a week. I think for our general participant mixed with all the mixed modality stuff and an endurance work is a lot of volume. So what I have done and what you've worked really well with me on is pulling a little bit of that back, but still maintaining quite a bit of this style of strength. So the trajectory, all it does is it changes it from our strength and everything. Like we're basically just aiming everything lower.
Yep.
So we're going up just at a slower trajectory rather than like shooting up. So if your goal would be to my main goal of training is to get stronger, I would push you into our Power Hour course. That is going to be the fastest trajectory. We have more strength. It's all strength days, and they're all going up. But our CrossFit, so we pull a little bit of that out, and depending on what training cycle we're in, we'll pull some out, we'll add some in. So I want to kind of just get behind the nuts and bolts of how we do each training cycle by just getting into our spring training cycle. So this is our Murph prep training cycle that we're in currently. So it's 4 weeks. So this is just May. So last week we did a 4x20. This is last week, a 4x20. This is our dynamic squat, Anderson squat. We did a 1 RM on Wednesday, deficit clean grip deadlift off of a plate. And then Friday we did, that's today.
That's today. Yeah.
Yep. So then we did a dead press, which is essentially what we did on Monday with a bench press. So now that bar's starting from a stop position, 2 inches above our chest, a 4x20 of those. As you can see, these are really applicable to what we're training for Murph. So these are our strengths before we're doing a Metcon. So that's going to help us with our push-up endurance and also our air squat endurance. These are done at pretty light loads. And we're trying to move really fast. I know that, those squats rocked me. I was shocked at how little weight I could move explosively and fast through those 4 sets on the upper body. But I know when I kind of heal up from that next week, those push-ups are going to feel snappier. And then every other week, we're actually going to reduce the volume. We're just going to do 2 dynamic days, bring it back up on that 3rd week, bring it back down because we'll have Murph right here. So after that 4th week, we'll just have a dynamic Tuesday, a dynamic day on Thursday. And then Murph's going to be that following Monday. And it's going to allow us to really be fresh and attack that workout and kind of blend it in there. We've got some Murph prep days where we're going to do some running intervals and then EMOMs of pull-ups, push-ups, and squats. Some of them are loaded. But that's how this cycle is generally set up. Each week varies a bit. So as you can see, we have strength Monday, Wednesday, Friday 1 week, then Tuesday, Thursday the following week. So if you come on different days, so we have some people, you know, they might be shift workers and come on different days. We try to vary that throughout most of the cycles that we do. So you're getting some sort of dose of strength pretty evenly throughout that. And then we do have a lot of people who come almost every day, so they're going to get it one way or another. But that's how we're doing our current cycle. It's working great so far. I'm feeling really good doing it. And then just generally, like, I think this conjugate style of strength training works so well for CrossFit because it really meets you where you're at. So you're building up to, you know, a heavy lift that's usually a novel lift. It's not like we're just doing typically like a 1RM back squat or just a conventional deadlift. They come up, but not super often every week. But we're doing a variation where usually your ego's not super tied into it. You build up to a heavy for that day, but you're consistently like tapping into some really heavy loads in a way that is also not just beating up your hips and your back, you know, in the same way.
CrossFit is conjugate and conjugate is CrossFit. It's constantly varied functional movements done at high intensity across broad modal times and domains. Yep. It is exactly the same definition as CrossFit. We vary our maxes, we vary our speed work, we vary the same kinds of functional movements, which are going to be our accessories, because we're not going to do any accessories that are going to beat up our body.
Yep.
They all pertain to either our lifts or our joints and how they move.
Yeah. I've really noticed too, what's great is if you're coming to a gym and you're doing group fitness as well, what it does a great job of is if you're in a really good training groove, you're sleeping, you're eating, you're feeling really good and you're doing everything appropriately, those PRs can jump so much faster than they could in a linear cycle. Mm-hmm. Because it allows you to just kind of cut loose. If it's there, you can, you know, let it rip, or then like those percentages, you're moving them super fast.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you are stressed and you're not doing all of these things, you're not going to get broken in half by, you know, the end of a hatch cycle or something that's, you know, you're bringing up, man, I got to hit 85% for 5 reps, and 85% might be your 1RM that day.
Yeah.
And you get broken half. So what it allows you to really do is train very consistently. It brings that injury, you know, just the injuries down quite a bit. I've seen it just from, you know, I see cancellations and things come in, and when we used to do linear training cycles, injuries were more a part of that cancellation reason, and they're very, very rarely a part of it now, which is really cool. And I think this plays a really big role in that.
Yeah. Plus, it's always fun when you see something new that you've never done. Some people get discouraged by that, but it's like, hey, you've never done it. Therefore, this is going to be a PR because you've never PR'd this. You've never done this before. So it's like you're already winning when you come in and do it.
Yep.
It's like, okay, now we're going to test it maybe 3 or 4 months down the road. You get a 30, 40 pound PR. Hell yeah, that's a good day.
Absolutely. I just think it's so fun. I mean, I've been training for 20 years, you know, and getting super hyped up for, you know, a 5x3 back squat, it gets harder, you know, as you keep doing it, and you need things to be novel and to be fun. And when I walk into the gym at 8:30 to do my workout and class, and I see the spotter arms set up everywhere, and, you know, we have bands and boxes out, and we've got a class of 20 people all, like, you know, doing a heavy, you know, banded squat, or we've got chains going on, or it's just like a new movement that I've never done. It gets me fired up. Like, it's just, it's tons of fun. And I really had a ton of fun in that fall training cycle. Just like every day, it's harder on the coaches a little bit. We got to set some stuff up, but it is so much more enjoyable to do a strength like that. And again, with people who've been training for a while, your ego's a lot less tied to, what your 1RM seated Z press is that day.
Yeah.
But if you've hit, 5 years ago, I hit 185 on a strict press. Like, we're doing a 1RM strict press, and I know that's not going to be there that day. That's going to really bum me out. But that new seated Z press, like, I've never done that from my level. I don't know what that is. Okay, that's good. That's a new PR on that lift because it's the first time I've ever done it. So, yeah, I think this is really fun. And what we're going to do is every training cycle, it's going to be a little different. So we're varying these. We're never going to have this figured out and locked in. It's all with this conjugate style. You're always going to see things like adapting and changing, and there's so much play in it rather than like, I really enjoyed, years ago doing like a Wendler training cycle, but once you've been through a couple of those, man, they get kind of redundant, and this never really seems to, because there's so many ways that we can change and adapt it. And as you see, like, there is the kind of the template, and then the template that we use for power hour, but there's tons of ways we can vary it. And as you guys are going to see, every training cycle, there's going to be some variance, and you're going to see fun stuff coming down the pipeline. We've had chains and things like that involved in power hour. We're going to start to see those injected into CrossFit, new banded setups. If you're just a follower of our channel, you're going to start to see these setups drip to you. So you can just follow like our Instagram, our YouTube, and these are going to be all like dripped out here over the summer. You can see some of the fun stuff we're doing in class. I'm excited for what's coming down the pipeline. Do you have anything to add, Jack?
No, sir.
Cool.
No, sir.
All right. I think this is a good place to stick a fork in it. We will see you next week.